Welcome to the True North 365 show, where we share our thoughts on life as women in the entrepreneurial space, discussing the unique challenges, victories, and blind spots we wish we would have known about long ago. I, Alex Whittingham, am your host, your friend and confidant along the journey to following your True North 365 days out of the year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Computer. Okay, welcome, Kori. I am so excited that you're joining us today. It's an honor and a privilege to have you. I met you just a couple weeks ago. Before that, I had no idea that someone like you existed in the world. And from the moment you walked into the room that we were both meeting in, I just felt this sense of peace with you, and that you are a woman who's had very high highs and you've been through the valley. And I can tell that because people who have been through valleys have this sense of calmness about them in the moments that they're not in those valleys anymore. So what I mean to say is that you're not a shallow person. Yeah, I can tell that you've been through different things in life and that you have just such character. So our audience doesn't know who you are. I'm going to just do a quick introduction, and then I would like for you to please tell us in your own words your story, what you do, how you empower women, and how you empower entrepreneurs. On your website, which is Kori Gouge, am I saying that correctly? Gouge. Okay, so Kori Gouge, and on your website, it says you're the true wealth mentor for rebel entrepreneurs. So welcome, and can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do and how you got here?
Well, thank you, Alex, so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and so amazing that we just met literally a week or two ago, and I felt the same way. I knew like there's this connection between us, and I'm excited that we're working together in this way. So it's super fun. So thank you for making this opportunity available to me and to all the people that you work with, and just getting your message out into the world in a bigger way is amazing. So thank you for your work.
Welcome.
For me, my work honestly started as an adolescent. So I, as a young girl, as many women do, developed an eating disorder. And the interesting thing was, from that young age, I took it from the perspective as an observer and started researching psychology and reading all these books and trying to understand the mind and what was happening with the mind, because I knew it wasn't just, I felt I was fat, right? I knew it was much deeper issue than that. And that led me down the path of just this passion for personal development and human behavior and transformation of consciousness. And I studied psychology in undergrad and experiential education, because I knew for me, therapy doesn't work for me in the respect of just talking through and swimming around in the past. What I see is the most valuable is, which is why I got into coaching, is looking at the present moment and how you can start to affect changes in that present moment, which will impact your future. And that, to me, is the most powerful tool we have, instead of spending all this time just processing and swimming around and just living in the past, honestly, because really, I mean, you know this, we can't change the past. So it was like this huge shift for me to be able to see, understanding more about how the mind works and how we can start to really make changes in the way we see the world and how that affects our world, our reality. And so I began coaching and working with women and men, actually, working with just career transitions and really getting their souls work in the world in a bigger way and showing up as their true selves in a bigger way. And instead of, which I think is very common, is that we compartmentalize ourselves and we are different people for different situations. And that ends up really eating away at us, because we don't really feel, like you kind of talk about, like your true north is when you can be yourself with everyone everywhere, and you're no longer modulating what you say or censoring yourself or holding yourself back. You're really showing up as your most powerful being, and you're expressing yourself in the most highest form. So that, to me, is that place where you stopped holding back and you stopped hiding, and you're really coming out as, this is who I am, and you like me or not, it's okay, because I like myself and my work is important and I need to get it out to the world in a bigger way. And so there's nothing going to stop me. So really the true wealth part is, for me, a lot of our areas of getting stuck often are rooted in a sense of self-worth and value. And so it's getting to that core of being able to get that out, because it's a lie, right? And to transform it into truth, and to live in a place where you feel wealthy being you, you feel wealthy in your work, in your relationships, in your health. And so looking at wealth in a broader perspective and knowing that your true wealth comes from that sense of having true worth, no matter what's happening in your life. Like you talked about the valleys, even when you're at the pit of despair, being able to hold on to yourself and know you're still worthy, and that you have inherent worth, even if you are in the depths of darkness. So that's a little bit about me.
Gosh. And everything that you say is obviously, well, to me, rings true. And finding that self-worth is something that so many people struggle with. I was just doing I went live like literally like 30 minutes ago. I was just doing my makeup. I like to get ready with my audience and just check in on a Friday morning, be like, what's up, guys? Like, getting ready to go into the weekend. And I had a realization that when we have big visions for our lives, when we want to do big things and we want to go big places, or not, if we want to like kind of shrink down and be in our hole and be, by ourselves, both sides of that, the light and the darkness, require self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And self-care is such a broad term lately. I feel like a lot of people are talking about self-care. It's trending. But it goes so deep, and it's so much more than getting a massage and getting a facial and going to yoga and, treating yourself to a bowl of ice cream or to that bowl of kale, depending on which kind of self-care you're doing.
Right.
So let's, where did you start? Were you always doing what you're doing now? Did you just know, as soon as you went in, like you were in school and you're like, I'm going to go be a life coach. I'm going to be a business coach. I'm going to help people live their authentic selves and get out of whatever the muck is holding them back. I'm going to help sling that off of them. When did you start realizing that this was the work that you were going to be doing?
Honestly, I do think it was when I was a teenager. I knew I obviously, like through different modalities and different things that I did, was able to heal myself from bulimia and anorexia. And I knew like I want to be able to help other women that are struggling. And it wasn't just I wanted to help them with eating disorders. It was because it was women to be themselves, no matter what size and no matter what they look like. And so it was always this sense of self-expression and in the truest form, and whatever that looks like for each woman. And so it was that desire coming from my own place of pain and not feeling comfortable being who I was, and knowing if I can affect change in this way, how many women can start to live in their full power, and how many women can stop the cycle of suffering and struggle and settling and living beneath their potential and sort of hiding from what they're really called to do in this world. And so it started at a young age, and then my path actually, of course, is windy. So for a while, because my initial desire was to do experiential therapy, which was helping people transform their consciousness through activities, right? So through some like outward bound or like survival skills. And so I worked in the outdoor industry for about 6 months, and then did some cross country and running coaching. So still kind of like looking at the physical, how the physical form, how the mind and the body are so interconnected, and how your mind, your body is actually stronger than your mind, but your mind thinks is stronger than your body, if that makes sense. Because your mind can stop your body from doing what it really needs to do, but your body actually knows this is what I need and this is what I'm capable of, but your mind's like, no, we can't do that. So it's being able to like have those two working more in concert versus in conflict. But from there, I pursued my master's degree in intercultural communication, because I was really starting to get more fascinated with language and how the words that we use, the thoughts that we think, the beliefs that we have, how that impacts your mind and how that impacts your body and how that impacts your reality, right? So that degree helped me start to put into form like human behavior and communication, those two links, which are intricately connected. And from there, I started working with first generation high school students, helping them really connect, kind of the same thing, connect with like who do you want to be in this world, and how do you want to show up, and what is the work that you want to bring to this world? And it was fascinating. And so helping them shift from, a lot of times these students come from lower income families, and so they have a little bit of a limitation that they have created for themselves based on their situations. And so helping them start to shift to see, you don't have to do what your parents did, or you don't have to do just what you have seen on TV or just what someone told you, really shattering their paradigm and letting them see all that is available to them. And then not getting overwhelmed by the choices, but really connecting back to their unique interests and gifts and strengths and skills, and how they really want to show up, and what is the thing that they feel like, this is the thing that I want to bring to the world and contribute. So that was my path. And in that industry, I worked for about 6 years and continued to kind of progress and move up in the ladder, of course, so they say. And I got to the point where I was coaching a staff of teachers doing the same thing that I had started doing, was teaching this curriculum of personal growth and self-awareness and post-secondary preparation, career sort of education. And I loved that part. And so as I was coaching these other teachers, I was doing the same thing. Like, how can you bring more of you to this job? And how can you let your authentic self come out in the work you're doing, so you actually enjoy this work more, and you're having more of an impact in the work that you're doing? And I started in that organization, the professional development committee, because I was like, we need to be not only teaching our students self-awareness, we need to be teaching our staff self-awareness and our community members self-awareness. So I started conducting trainings for community and for our organization, and just was like, this is the world. I love this world. Like, this is the world I'm supposed to be in. But I also felt a little bit constricted by the bureaucracy of an organization, right? So, and I also saw there was not a whole lot of potential, because I'd gotten to the highest point before I was going to be the director, which the director had been there for many, many years, had no intention on retiring. So, and I wasn't exactly sure if more administration was really the right work for me, because I did love that direct contact with my staff and with students. So I actually took, like I think we talked about last time we were at Joe's, is like really trusting my intuition. And my intuition was like, it's time to leave. And it seems crazy and sort of irresponsible, but I'm going to take a job in Mexico, because that's really what my soul is desiring at this time, is to connect with this community of people that and being a part of that community in a different way. So being sort of the outsider in the community. So I quit my job, moved to Mexico, and took a job there and worked there for about 6 months, and then took a job in Costa Rica and was coaching and teaching. And in Costa Rica, I had to start my own company as a contractor. So everything was kind of leading me towards the path of entrepreneurship and coaching. And so everything just worked. Of course, my philosophy is, when you trust your intuition, you will be guided exactly where you need to go. So, so once I was on that path, and it was like, it was like no brainer. Of course, I'm going to pursue my coaching certification, because this is what I'm meant to be doing. And of course, I want to work for myself now that I've working for this organization where I'm a contractor, and I'd rather set my own schedule and be able to impact people in a bigger way, versus having to follow a certain sort of collateral based on the organization, if that makes sense. So that was kind of a long answer, but
it's true, and you're right. There is there's something to be said about working in an organization. It's very boxed in, and the reason is because with a clear understanding of everyone's expectations and roles at that's why it's called organization, because everyone needs to be really organized. Mm-hmm. And there is a place for that. I know for me, I used to think like, okay, like the dream I had was to be on my own, doing my own thing, and be self-employed all the time. And when I achieved that goal and left the workforce, I realized, there's components of a job that were really stable for me. And then making that shift into being self-employed, it's been a journey. I'll tell you that, because I didn't expect it to be the way it is now. And it's just that idealistic world that some of us have. And especially in America, because we're so blessed with so many opportunities to do whatever we want. And then you have social media slinging it in your face with the way someone else's life looks. And
Right.
then you think, well, I want to be like that. Or man, if only I had, this skill set and this skill set or this mindset, I could be like that person. And comparison is the biggest thief of all joy. And I
Right.
want to, I want to ask you as well. A lot of our audience doesn't know how to follow their intuition. There's no course in school, at least the schools I've been to, that teach
Right.
you how to follow your intuition. And so can you give us your advice on what it feels like to follow your intuition, and how you can navigate that?
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, intuition is a thing that you're constantly cultivating. And the times when you feel like I just don't hear anything are the times when we're most disconnected from ourselves. And of course, that's super easy to do these days because there's social media and Netflix and any number of, TV series that people get addicted to, and alcohol and food and shopping. And so the more you are disconnected and distracted, the harder it is to listen to your intuition. And so obviously one of the things to do is to start to really be mindful of what am I, when I'm feeling uncomfortable, what is this sort of desire to disconnect, instead of just sitting in the discomfort and knowing in that place is when you will start to hear what actually you need versus what you think you need, if that makes sense. And so obviously removing some distractions, and if you are going to engage in a distraction, obviously be more conscious of it. So I'm choosing to, watch this show, and because I'm desiring some laughter or whatever it is, instead of just, oh my God, I just need to check out. I can't handle it, right? So it's really being mindful of that desire for whatever it is that you are seeking at the moment. And the crazy thing about intuition is often you don't know, like, is this intuition? Is this me, procrastinating? Is this me just rationalizing? But for me, the trick is when you hear like a hit of intuition or an impulse, or you have this gut feeling, even if it sounds crazy and irrational and you aren't really sure if it's intuition, my suggestion is just do it, because the more you do it, the more you'll start to decipher, oh, that was procrastination. Oh, this was intuition. Oh, this was inspiration. Oh, this was resistance. And you're becoming the whole time more conscious of your own sort of mannerisms. And you're also really connecting with, oh, the times when I really hear it are when I'm doing things that I love, or actually being quiet, or on a walk, or whatever it is. Does that make sense? So it's like helping I feel like some people are like, well, shouldn't I just know it's my intuition? And I don't know. I would say it takes time, and it takes, for all of us, it takes a process and practice of, okay, I heard this thing, and I hear this a lot, like, oh, I had this idea. That's intuition. Instead of like, oh, because a lot of people say, I had this idea to do this thing, then I didn't do it. And it's like, well, so, and part of what happens is when we don't do that thing that we had the idea about, then our intuition becomes dampened, and we don't hear it as much. And we also develop less trust within ourselves. Does that make sense? So if you I have this idea to do this thing, and then you go do it, you're developing courage, obviously, and trust within yourself. And the more you develop those aspects, the more connected you are to your intuition, because your intuition's like, okay, cool, she's going to obey me. And versus like, she's going to ignore me and think it's too uncomfortable and it's too inconvenient. And that's the thing about intuition. It's often not convenient. It's not comfortable, and it can be scary. And that's the process of really developing that self-trust of, okay, I have this idea, or had this nudge. I'm going to go do it. Even if it's terrifying, I'm going to go do it, because I'm trusting that I'm on the right path, and I don't have to know what it's going to lead to, and I don't have to know why. I'm just on this path of trusting myself. And this is the process that I'm committed to. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes so much sense. Gosh, I hear everything that you're saying, and those downloads happen to me all the time. Like, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that they come to mind when I'm setting aside time to connect with myself and being content and having gratitude for my life, and what I'm like looking at what I already have, like the beautiful relationship I have with my son. Someone just 2 days ago or 3 days ago lost that beautiful relationship with their son through the shooting that happened at the STEM school in Highlands Ranch. And, it's moments like those that I think are reminders for parents, or let's say there was, I don't know, someone went in and shot up a dog kennel. Well, that would be good for people with dogs to remember, like, you need to spend time with your dog. Right. So,
Right.
and over time, it's just saying, like, you know what, this is really important to me, that I go for my bike ride every day, or I go for a run, or I hug my child. This morning, my son was like, Mom, I just really want to watch a movie before I go to school. We wake up pretty early. Normally I'm like, no, dude, you got to do your studying. You got tests today going on. And instead I was like, you know what? Let's watch a movie, like whatever. It's fine. And then I think about, I should write about this. I should do a podcast about this. I should talk about things that are happening in our lives that are vulnerable, that would make me feel like, what if people judge me? Or what if that I didn't make my son study before going to take the test at school, and instead let us watch a movie before school? Or and you're right though. And then and then when I fight it, it just feels like there's a piece of my soul that kind of dampens down a little bit. Like, why didn't I just do that? And then I start feeling, and then I hold on to resentment against other people and myself and my life, because I'm not just doing it. And then once, and I'm, of course I'm speaking for me here, but I know that our audience feels the same way in certain things that they're going through, whether they're parents or not, or entrepreneurs or not. Just do it. Like, just make the calls and do the things that you need to do to move your life forward, and do the crazy ideas you have, unless it's like harming other people or harming yourself. Like, don't do those crazy thoughts. But you're right. Just those ideas that we get out of nowhere. I said this morning, you gotta have a, it's good to bring a little notebook with you everywhere you go, so you can write down those ideas. Because those ideas, you're like, oh, I'll remember that. And then you wake up the next day, you're like, now what was that thought? How did it go? And then it's gone. And you're like, oh, why didn't I write that down? That was silly. I should have written something down.
And it's funny too, if you think about all the time that we spend second guessing and talking ourselves out of it, we could have already done it.
Yes. So when do you get in your time? When you need to have moments of bravery, and is there like a system you have in place, or a system you teach your clients how to get the stuff done? Kind of like there's a book called Eat That Frog, and it talks about, just get the thing done that you least, that scares you the most, or that's like, oh, it's that big, hairy, audacious goal. Do you have times in the day, or times for your clients that or moments or ideas that our viewers would be able to apply in their lives for things like that?
Well, you kind of hit on it. It's really the biggest way to transform your life is to do the things that terrify you and have the conversations that terrify you. And like you mentioned, like being vulnerable and sharing parts of you that terrify you, because that is really, and not coming from a place of, reality TV, look at my crazy life. It's more coming from a place of, I'm sharing the truth of what's true for me. And I know this is probably true for someone else, and it's scary. But me showing up and sharing this is going to transform not only my life and how I see the world and what's possible for me, but also potentially impact other people's lives. But as far as like a process, it's funny because what I really rely on is this place of intuition of not fighting. So if like yesterday, it was funny, I went to this networking event early in the morning and came home and I was like, oh yeah, I should get to work. And I could just feel like this, and so I had this idea of like, I really just want to bake. And of course it doesn't make sense. Like I should be working. It's the work week. I have a business I'm running, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to bake. And I don't know why. And it doesn't have to relate to my business, and it doesn't have to mean anything about me and about my character. I'm just going to bake. And then I was like way more productive in the afternoon and towards the evening, because I'd allowed myself that creativity and that opportunity to connect with myself in a different way, versus forcing myself to sit there and try to write something which wouldn't have come out in a way that actually had any impact, because I was coming from a place of not trusting myself, if that makes sense. And so it's tricky because we're trained in society 9 to 5 or whatever, you have to be productive and you have to be working towards your business, and everything you do has to have a result and has to be working towards something. And I really am not an advocate of that, because I feel and I believe when you are really connected to your intuition, you can do the things like baking or watching a movie with your son. And in that moment, you're actually activating something within the universe, within source, that's going to bring the things that you desire to you, because you're trusting you're supported, versus I have to be in control and I have to make sure everything I'm doing relates to me bringing in clients or money or supporting my son financially, versus actually when I do what is true for me and fills my soul and fills my relationship with other people, that's actually going to bring me that wealth that I desire. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes sense because you're explaining it. And because in the real world, or what we're conditioned, you go to school, you work hard, you go home, you do homework, you wake up, you do it all over again, and then you have projects you need to work over the weekend. So, and I mentioned school because I think one common factor every single American has, no matter if you had great parents, no parents, bad parents, all the like, we all pretty much had to go to school. And that's what it's for. It's training us to work our tails off all the time. And then you get into a job and then you admire these people that are becoming team leads and managers and all these, climbing this ladder. And so then we're conditioned, we need to work overtime, we need to show up, we need to work hard. So detangling in reprogramming the brain, it's not an overnight thing. And I love how you give light to the time with our family. And you also mentioned putting work into those things that bring you joy, that fulfill your soul, that allow you to trust the universe, to where you're not just wasting time or just, zoning out. Because so many people, they watch Netflix or Amazon Prime just to and I get this comment all the time. They're like, when I'm approaching them to join me in business, come do this network marketing with Arbonne. It's amazing. I help people get healthy. You can try it for a few days or a few months, and just, what if it worked? What if it did pay your car payment every month? What if it paid your rent every month? Like, call me and you could be a part of this wonderful community. And they go, yeah, but when I'm not at work, I really just have to turn my brain off. And I totally get that, because I have moments like that where I'm like, I don't even watch Netflix, but I'm going to put on some Netflix. And I'm not going to say I'm going to Netflix and chill because I'm single, but I'm just going to put on some Netflix and chill and turn my brain off. So how do we stop running away from our lives? How do we stop watching the TV or the Netflix or the Amazon Prime, like, and do the work that needs to be done to find who we were created to be, and trust source to guide us along when it, we have so much anxiety and depression happening in today's world. And I mean, how do we do that? How do we get to that place that you're talking about?
Well, I think it starts, a couple ways. I think it is best to start small. So think about maybe reductions in like whatever it is that your distraction, your preference for distraction. I would call it an addiction in some shape or form.
Yeah.
But and maybe it's like, you know what, I'm going to try for the rest of May, I'm going to reduce my Netflix in half, or I'm a couple of nights a week, I'm not going to watch any Netflix, or whatever it is for you. I'm going to only, have one drink on the weekend versus 5, or whatever it is. And this is the part I think that is critical, is in those moments where you're like, I just want to check out and I'm so uncomfortable and I have all this anxiety. In those moments, if you can just sit and breathe, and I like to do this exercise you've probably heard of called box breathing, where you inhale for a count of 3 to 5 counts, hold your breath for 3 to 5 counts, exhale for 3 to 5 counts, and then hold the breath out for 3 to 5 counts. So you're reducing your anxiety by obviously slowing down your heart rate and your breath. And what the cool thing is, and within 90 seconds, you will whatever you're feeling will have just diminished, and significantly diminished. And in those moments, you're like, wow, actually, that wasn't so bad. I'm actually okay. And if you could stay in that moment and ask, what do I really need right now? Like, what is it? Is it, I really am craving companionship, or I just need to, I really am actually physically tired. Maybe I want to close my eyes, or I need a cup of tea, or I need to go outside and get some fresh air. But connecting from a place of, this is what I truly desire versus what my head thinks I need, because my head wants to just escape. And my heart actually doesn't want to escape. My heart wants to stay connected and give me what I truly desire. And in those moments, even if it's only for a few moments where you can just sit with yourself in that anxiety and let it like go through you, that also helps you build that trust within yourself that you have the resources and skills to maneuver whatever comes your way and not be overtaken by depression and anxiety. And in those moments, you also start to see it's a choice, right? I can choose to let this anxiety take over, and I can choose to spiral into insanity with my mind, or I can choose just to sit here and, like you mentioned, like look around and think about all the things I'm appreciative of, and really be conscious of, I'm breathing and noticing my heart rate start to slow down and noticing my anxiety start to diminish. And wow, I just did that to myself. I didn't need anyone else. I didn't need TV. I didn't need alcohol. I didn't need food. I was able to soothe myself. And that is like one of the most powerful places to be, is you start to see you have the power, not TV or alcohol or sex or shopping or social media, to master your internal state and to master your well-being. So, and your energy, right? So it takes practice, obviously, and it takes a lot of courage, because we obviously often don't want to sit in those scary moments.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, those have been the most powerful transformations, is when I can just sit with it and see that I sat with it and that I didn't, crumble and turn into like a puddle on the floor. That I actually was like, oh, okay, now what? What's next? How is this actually perfect, right?
Yeah.
How is this actually working for me? Even if it feels at the time really scary.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It's uncharted and unstomped territory for so many people, because we have so many ways to distract ourselves, and with our phones, we have access to watch anything. You can watch a whole movie on your phone, or you can scroll through Facebook Watch for hours. It's just crazy, but it is what's happening now. And like you said, it's just spending time with that uncomfortable feeling. Somebody once told me, when you have an uncomfortable feeling or you're getting upset about something, then take a few minutes, like you said, breathe. And also, I'm curious to see what you think of this technique, is to imagine you have a release valve somewhere in your chest or your stomach, and just imagine letting the steam come out and really like be in that anger, or in that, just that, those lower, there's a thing called map of consciousness, and there's like lower vibrational feelings and higher vibrational feelings. And so when you're in those lower states of being, such as fear, guilt, anger, hopelessness, despair, anguish, resentments, really like be in that and let it work through you, because there's levels to our feelings that we have that need to be brought to the surface in order to release it and let us get back to that unconditional love, that joy, that place where source, God, universe is at, and it's already perfect. We're the ones who mess it up. And I think that's a big a big pill to swallow, is that when we look around and we see our lives, we chose to be in this spot. We chose to be where we are now. And when we don't take responsibility for exactly where we are and exactly what's going on, that's when things get murky. And that's when we can really get in that blaming mode, and why me, my parents this, my siblings that, my spouse this, my kids that. And we just hang on to these people and these situations and these events that have happened in our past, and we bring them into the present, and then carry them into the future, and then expect that our lives are gonna miraculously change it's just not. It's like being like, I'm going to go win the lottery, but you never even buy a lottery ticket. That's
right.
insanity. Like,
Totally.
come on, guys. So if you want the inner workings, if you want to master your life, it is all about doing the work. It's like, you got to go buy the lottery ticket, man.
Right.
And winning the lot, going and buying the lottery ticket is everything you're talking about, Kori. Spending time in intentional work that's going to make your soul happy. And if you're not doing that, you need to reach out to the audience that's listening or watching. Either reach out to myself or Kori, because there's lots of resources out there that are even free. I have a list of like 55 books in different categories for daily affirmations, motivation, soul searching, different spiritual books and places. And it's all available to us. It's just a matter of believing that we can have that. And I know I just went off on a huge tangent there, but what you're talking about is so true for me, because I've experienced both sides of the coin.
It's like you mentioned, it's like when, because it is a choice, right? When you can see, like you talk about those lower vibrational energies of, despair and depression and worry and frustration and anxiety, when you can start to see like, okay, nothing and no one has power over me, not even this emotion. And you can start, what I like to do is also identify the lie that you're believing, right? Like, oh, it's just, everything is always working, like you talked about, everything's always working against me. Everything's so hard. And it's because my parents, and it's because of, blah, 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 blah. When you start to identify, okay, what is it that I'm believing that's creating this sensation? And really the work is like seeing that it's not true, and then really alchemizing that feeling and changing that lie into what is actually true, which then alchemizes the energy into a higher vibrational energy. Because then you're like, actually what's true is, like you mentioned, no one and nothing has power over me, and that I get to choose how I show up in every situation. And it doesn't have to mean anything. And the only reason it's a problem is because I think it's a problem, instead of seeing it as, this is actually a wonderful opportunity for me to grow and transform and to become the higher version of me. And in that work is really where we start to spend more time then in the higher vibrational energies, because you're always just like, you know what, that's not true. What is actually true? Okay, and what do I feel when I actually believe the truth? Well, I actually feel a lot different. I feel more powerful. I feel more joyful. I feel more impactful. And you are, obviously, when you're suffering and struggling, you're not actually benefiting many people. It's a very self-absorbed place to be, and isolating place to be. And so we don't actually have the ability to be of service when we're in that place. And so, but when we're in those high vibrational states where a lot of people think like, oh, it's just so selfish to do what you want and to, do things that you love. And I'm like, it's actually not. It's actually your responsibility, because when you're doing what you love, think about your impact on your family and on your friends and every single person, strangers. Like, you are such a higher vibrational expression that you're going to impact people in a huge way just because you're doing what you love. And it's amazing.
Yes.
So that was my soapbox.
I love it. Stay on your soapbox forever, Kori, because everything you're saying is what the world needs to hear, that it's good to do what makes you happy. It's not selfish. It's actually very selfless to do what makes you happy, and to get out of the mind-numbing activities and swirling around in your own stuff. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting the same results. And I know for me, so I'm in sales, like I'm in business, right? And so when I'm doing the work, this is what we're doing right here. This is me and you. We're doing the work. We're putting ourselves out there. We are having a vulnerable, courageous conversation. And this started because you reached out to Joe, who I happened to work for. And then at the end, I was like, man, I really want to ask her if I can reach out to her and have a conversation and see if it would lead anywhere. But that took courage. And all it was saying, hey, do I have your permission to send you an email or send you a text? And you said yes. And I was like, okay, because so many times it's happening less and less. I'm learning how to take care of myself. So when I'm around people, who wouldn't want to hang out with me? I like hanging out with me, so they're going to
totally.
So of course. But when I'm feeling like, I kind of suck, or I I didn't do what I said I was going to do, or I'm not feeling myself. Well, guess what? No one else is going to feel me either. It's just it's like just taking care of ourselves and doing what we need to do. And I also want to shed light on the power of no, learning how to say no to people. And opportunities. Just a few weeks ago, I had a couple of different opportunities to make some extra, I like having multiple sources of income just because I've had all my eggs in one basket before. And, you know, when that basket breaks and then you're like, oh my gosh, and then all the eggs break and you're like, this is not good. It's good to have a couple different ways to make some money for yourself. And, I have lots of opportunities coming in to make money through different sources. And I've learned I just got to say no, because I'm actually I'm just so excited about everything that I'm taking on more than I really want to internally. And then it's not serving others. And that has not, I don't even think that has anything to do with what we were just talking about. But like you're saying, just taking care of yourself and knowing that is the key. It's good to take care of yourself. It's hard, especially as moms or entrepreneurs. It's totally challenging.
Well, it's like you mentioned, it's like, taking care of yourself is demonstrating that you value yourself, right? And what you're doing is creating more and more trust with yourself, that like, this is not an opportunity for me, and it's okay for me to say no, and this one is a great opportunity for me, and it's okay for me to say yes. But if we don't have that internal trust, then that's when we're starting to like spread ourselves thin or getting resentful because we don't do actually what we want. We're just doing what we think we should. And when our head takes over instead of our heart, that's when we often get into a lot of trouble.
So how do you manage? I'm curious. We have a few minutes left, and I want to ask you, how do you know the difference? Like, how do you get out of your head and into your heart? Now, I know this is kind of the flavor of our conversation, and I hope that you come back on the show. I know we're on Facebook Live, but we're also recording this for a podcast and YouTube. So there's multiple episodes that come out each month, and I hope you come back because you're a wealth of knowledge, and I think the world they need to hear what you have to say. But for someone that's in their head, I all of a sudden, I think it's like they call it ego and pride. You'll get in your head and, you'll think like, well, I'm doing too much, or I'm not doing enough, or whatever it is. How does what are some, I may have already asked this, like simple tools to get out of your head into your heart? You talked about breathing, talked about doing something for yourself. And what else, is there anything else? Let me put it this way. Is there anything else you want to share for helping people become more heart-centered to create a more abundant life for whatever it is they're doing?
Well, so what I like to do is, I don't know if you've heard of the song, Check Yourself Before You Wreck Yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So what I like to do is in those moments, like, check yourself. Like, is this coming from my head? Which most of the time, yes, because I'm a very heady person. I'm super analytical. And I have definitely gone down the road of analysis paralysis. And in that place, obviously, you don't take any action. You don't make a decision. You just get more and more information, which is useless because it just is overwhelming, right? So when you're in that space, what I like to do is really, like you talked about, like, okay, so how can I get into my body? Where do I feel this in my body? Do I feel like some tension in my gut, or I feel, a little bit of, tightness in my chest, or so you're starting to get out of your head into your body. Okay, so what would it feel like? So let's say I need to decide, to take this action or not take this action. Okay, I feel taking this action, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel not taking this action a little bit uneasy, but it feels a little bit lighter. Like I feel a little more expansiveness. And then like connecting, like, okay, so am I willing to take that action right now based on how I felt it in my body? Like, what is my body guiding me towards? And if you still are like, oh, I'm still too much in my head, what I like to do is just completely change up what you're doing. So if you're sitting down, like writing, like, like get up, like go dance, get out of the house, go to a coffee shop, like just stop right there and be like, you know what, not now, I'll do this later. I'm going to change my environment. And in changing your environment, I kind of call it like disorienting yourself. So you're starting to see different things and be in a different place, and you're feeling differently because your body's maybe moving. And then obviously in those times, sometimes it's when we get those hits, like, oh, of course I'm going to say no. Like, why did I even question? But if we're in that place of we can't get out and we're just cycling, that doesn't work, right? Like, you have to make sure you either are really able to, because it takes practice, right? Connect to your body. Or if you are like, I don't have that yet, like, just get up and walk around, like clap your hands, like go out of the house, go fix some tea, and just, focus on something else. And even tell yourself, like, not now, like now's not the right time. And the other part that I like to do is to speak it out loud and to notice your tone of voice. Because when we're in a place of not believing ourselves or not trusting ourselves, our tone of voice is different, right? So if I'm like, please let me figure this out, like, I don't trust that I can figure it out. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But if you're coming from a place like I talk about, it's called the tone of truth, right? So the tone of truth is when whatever you're saying is, like, I would say, like, there's clouds in the sky. I'm not trying to convince you to believe me. I'm not trying to convince myself to believe me. That's just a fact, right? Or my name is Kori. It's on my birth certificate. I'm not making it up. I don't have to convince you. But that tone of voice is very different than the tone of voice we might use when we're trying to maybe say an affirmation or change a belief system. And so if you're saying an affirmation or playing around with decisions and you don't actually believe yourself, it doesn't have any impact, right? It won't change anything. And so if you can practice saying out loud, whatever it is you're grappling with, or whatever affirmation you're trying to implant or new belief you're trying to implant, and notice, do I actually believe myself? If someone were to walk by right now, would they notice that I was trying to convince myself, or would they be like, oh yeah, of course, that's who she is. There's no doubt in my mind. So you can do it in front of the mirror, you can record yourself until you start to notice, how is my tone of voice different when I actually believe versus when I don't? Like, usually when you don't believe yourself, your voice comes from your throat and it's more high pitched. Yes. And when it's true, it's coming from your core, and there's no emotion, right? There's no agenda. It's just, that's who I am. And so that kind of helps to that place of, is this the right decision? Is not the right decision? It's just, okay, when I speak it out loud, am I trying to convince myself to take that action? Or is it an action that actually resonates with the tone of truth? Like, of course, that's what I do. Yeah. Does that help?
Oh, it helps so much. And I know exactly what you mean, because when I tell people I'm a motivational speaker, it just comes out. Like, I'm a motivational speaker. I have a podcast and YouTube channel, and I help empower people to live their authentic, true selves. And then the work that I've done in network marketing is there's cracks in my belief, because in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get so much negative feedback, or they're not going to, because I ask a lot of people to take a look at this business opportunity. I ask a lot of people to take a look at these products. So therefore I get a lot of no's or not yets. And in my own business, it's like, well, you can't tell me that I don't do motivational speaking. You can't tell, it's not like I can say, hey, come work with me and do motivational speaking with me. The business model that I have in my own company is not set up that way. It's not a network marketing company. It's an individual sole proprietor LLC. That's it. So whether someone decides they're going to be a motivational speaker and go out and do it or not, like, that's not an option. So therefore in my mind, I'm like, oh, locked in, loaded. And then the other one, I'm like, oh, there's so many other things, like, oh, I'm going to have to be a leader. I hope they like the products. Or what if they don't? What if they do? What if they say yes? What if they say no? And then my mind like spirals in all these different scenarios. And you're right though, doing those affirmations and practicing them, game changer. And one of my friends, Carrie, she does this thing called an e-box. It's like the biofeedback, and it actually reads off out of 350 phrases the top 10 that your body needs to hear right now in order to help you achieve the level. I have body image issues, and I don't want to say body image issues, but like where I can never be fit enough. Like, no matter how many pieces of lettuce and how many carrots I eat and how much water I drink, there's still that little extra there. And I didn't even talk to her about that our last session. And it came through in my affirmations that I love every single part of my body. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, wow. But it's helping, and I keep it in my wallet. So every time I open my wallet, which for me is a lot, because I like to buy things, I read those affirmations, and it's so true. So thank you for sharing that. I really hope that people who have watched and people, things that are going on, I know I sent you a questionnaire of things that we'd be reviewing, but every time it's like, it's just a foundation of things we can talk about, but it usually just takes form of whatever your calling is and what you're doing in the world, and then bringing that to people so they can just get a glimpse of the work you're doing, because it's the essence of who you are. And I think the more that we can be the essence of who we are and not who we think we should be, the happier we'll be, and the happier the world will be that we're living in, and the people that we're encountering. Just like you said earlier, it's more enjoyable to be around someone that's just doing who they are instead of what they are. And well, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share? Hopefully, like I said, you'll come back and we can talk more. But for today, we're out of time. But is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Well, I would say the key for all of the work that we've talked about is really a place of trust, and a place of really getting to that place where everything that you say and to everyone, everywhere, that you could say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's 10 out of 10 truth. So being able to say no to something without any sort of agenda or negative energy, just like, no, it's true for me that I don't want to do this. And honoring that decision is in your highest interest. And then honoring every moment that happens, whether it's good or bad, is in your highest interest. And really sending out appreciation for everything. Like, isn't it great that, I'm struggling with this area because it's actually making me into a better person, or making me actually able to help people that are also struggling in that area, or whatever it is. So it's like really seeing that everything is, like you talked about, it's our choice, and it's our choice what we do with it. And once we see that, and we see that we are the ones that can transform that, and like you mentioned, like even with body stuff, right? Like getting to a place of when you can say those affirmations the same way you say you're a motivational speaker, or that your name is Alex, right? That it's like, it's cemented, it's part of your being as truth. And so really being able to test that truth, like, okay, am I speaking 10 out of truth in everything I say and with everyone, no matter what, and I'm not changing it based on who I'm with or what I'm talking about? And that really, I think, is the key, because that's what's building that trust within yourself to know the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step.
Perfect. Perfect truth, girl. You are amazing. And how can, other than on this Facebook Live, but for our listeners on the podcast and people watching on YouTube, how can people get in touch with you? If you have either a phone number, a website, or you could just give us your name with the last name spelled.
Of course. Yeah. So my website is my name, which is KoriGouge.com. Obviously, you can follow me on my Facebook business page, which is also my name. My Instagram is also Kori Gouge, Kori.Gouge. And then I also have a YouTube channel where I post videos. So lots of different ways. I also have a page, LinkedIn profile. So find me anywhere, everywhere, just Kori Gouge. So, and thank you so much for having me. It's been so wonderful speaking with you.
Oh, my pleasure, and everyone else's pleasure too, that was able to hop on. And great. And way to keep it simple, like your website and all of your things are your name. I've thought about that. I'm like, maybe that's what I should do. Just be my name, and then it's easy to remember. So we'll be talking more. I'm very confident of that. I can say that 10 out of 10, we will be talking more.
Yes. Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye, Alex.
Bye. All right, guys, that is a wrap. I'm so grateful that you took the time out of your day to sit back, relax, and listen to the show. If you enjoyed what you had to hear, go ahead and drop us a comment. We're always looking for other people to join us on the show, to give us their feedback so we can keep delivering high-quality content over and over again throughout the year. Hope you're having a great day or night wherever you're at, and we will talk to you next time.